From the betting odds for both fighters being almost 50-50 to Chris Algieri wavering in his support for either boxer, here's all the speculation surrounding Errol Spence and Terence Crawford's match on July 29, 2023. First off, the odds are extremely close between the two boxers. Yep, you heard that right, with Errol's odds racking up to a +100 and Terence's standing at -120, there's only a very slight difference in their win probability. Bud has gained a 54% probability of victory, and so Spence isn't too far behind with his 46%. No doubt that it's going to be a pretty level playing field for both the American boxers. You just gotta take a look at their fight history. They're undefeated champs in their own right. Spence holds the WBA, WBC, and IBF titles, while Crawford has the WBA in his bag, and their fight records are a clean slate of knockouts. Since his debut in 2012, The Truth has managed to win 22 of his 28 fights via knockout. His last fight against ex-WBA World Welterweight Champion Yordenis Ugas saw him dominate, bagging a victory by TKO in the 10th round. And Crawford's no slouch either. His record is equally, if not more, impressive, having scored 30 knockouts in his 39-0 streak, and his last face-off against David Avanasian ended sweetly for him in the 6th round. When you compare the two side by side, Terence does seem to be on the smaller side. But if you think that's going to hold him back from absolutely destroying his opponent, you're in for one hell of a surprise. Because if you remember Bud's debut fight back in 2008, where he knocked out Brian Cummings in just 26 seconds, you'll have to agree that the man can be a beast in the ring. I mean, there's a reason the odds for a draw in Spence versus Crawford are a whopping +1600. Most people agree that the outcome of the fight is kind of a coin flip. These odds do keep shifting as fights get nearer though, as they started off with both boxers even at -112 for the money line, but have since changed to favor Terence slightly more, especially when it comes to KO and TKO predictions, where the Omaha native has +360 chances as compared to his opponent's -550. It does make sense, as Crawford's fought more pro fights than Spence, and is also one of the best boxers in the league when it comes to fighting at a distance. His activity in the past years has also been greater than Errol's, who's only gotten the opportunity to fight twice since 2019. Not to mention, The Truth has unfortunately gotten a fair share of nasty injuries that could allow the fight to tip in his rival's favor. Poor guy got into 2 car crashes and has a history of retina problems, so his out-of-the-ring issues have racked up. Many pros have noticed these problems and seem to be placing their bets on Terence, one of them being the legendary trainer and analyst Teddy Atlas, who's confidently said that he can only see one winner for this welterweight fight, and it's not going to be Spence. When the analyst was asked who he thought would win, he immediately named Terence as his pick, but he also named several of Spence's strengths right after that, saying that the Long Island native was a natural welterweight and had goof punches and jabs in his arsenal. What's more, he called Spence a beast and how he was very solid. And I gotta ask, are you sure you're not rooting for Errol over here, Atlas? He acknowledged that while it seemed like he was advocating for The Truth, Crawford's still the guy he's betting on. And why's that? Well, Teddy claimed that Bud's instinctive fighting style made him a freaking junkyard dog in the ring, and that the boxer is able to fight to his own tune, which is an underrated but very useful little skill. I get where Teddy's coming from, because Terence can be scary to watch when he's in his offensive mood. The man's incredible at altering his fighting style to match his opponents. He studies his opponents in an almost predatory way, and then uses any weakness he finds against them. Usually that's when he's fighting southpaw, but he can manage a mean orthodox stance too. You can't deny how Crawford's higher on the pound-for-pound list, and that might be enough for some to give him an edge in the who's better debate. But Spence has plenty of support from pros too, and for good reason. Chris Algieri has spoken in favor of Errol, giving many reasons why he thinks his pick will dominate Crawford. He said that Terence may have a versatile skill set, but Spence is just bigger and stronger than him, and that's not something to underestimate in a boxing match. Errol's high work rate is also a factor that'll make things difficult for Bud, as he'll have to up his pace a lot while also maintaining top shape. Then there's the age matter. Seeing as Crawford is 3 years older than Spence, both of them are aging out of their prime and need to be extra careful about cardio and weight regulations. If the match potentially reaches the 12-round mark, it could be pretty difficult for Terence to dodge Errol's leg attacks, since the man's simply not young enough to withstand that. Plus, His opponents at 147 have been all regular names, the most impressive being Porter or Garcia, so that's something that puts his credibility to the test. Algieri didn't leave out Spence's injuries, though, saying that while he had the better competition, Terence wasn't the one with 2 car accidents and a torn retina, so there are a lot of situations to consider. He's still pro Spence, though he is open to changing his bets later on as the fight gets nearer. To his credit, Spence is completely confident in his abilities to take down his opponent, saying that he'll break him physically and mentally. Sheesh. Those are some bold claims to make against a fighter who's being favored over you, even if it is just a slight edge. But he said a lot more on the kickoff press conference for the July 29th showdown, especially about his opponent's mentality, about how he's definitely going to fight and make it a great show for the crowd. Spence does feel like he's the superior fighter, though, and even mentioned how most fighters were just too light in the ass for him. Comparing Crawford to Danny Garcia, The Truth said that both were great fighters, with Terence being faster and quicker, and Garcia being the best counterpuncher in the world. Errol has a long history of facing off against some of the best counterpunchers in the game, so that shouldn't be too big of a problem for him when it comes to Crawford. And he's pretty aware of the impact of this fight, too, claiming that it will be legacy-defining for both of them, and that if it didn't happen, it would have been a dent in their legacies. The boxer even said that this is the type of fight people will be talking about for 20 to 30 years to come, and that the next 2 generations will be coming back to this match. I gotta agree with him here. It's definitely gonna be an epic fight, and Spence didn't shy away from addressing his injuries too, saying that he's still blessed to be able to do the thing he loves, even after the car crashes and eye surgery. He talked about the impact these incidents had on his life, mentioning how they got him focused and renewed his dedication. Props to the boxer for not letting his injuries be an excuse, and instead taking them in stride and showing how they've been a learning experience for him, since that takes some real sportsmanship. A lot was said at the kickoff conference too, but what really got people talking was the face-off. Spence looked way bigger than Crawford and seemed more calm and in his element. Honestly, he almost resembled a junior middleweight, and I can totally picture him standing in front of the likes of 154-pound champion Jermell Charlo instead. Terence got completely washed out in his presence, looking more suited for the 140-pound division. Fortunately, though, he's just as cocky about the fight as his opponent, as the Omahan said the match would be a gift with his and Errol's presence. The man has promised fans some greatness on fight day, and while I can't call either of them modest, it's creating a lot of hype for the matchup, so I can't be too mad about that. So there you have it, folks. From Chris Algiers' shaky support for Spence to a pretty even betting pool, these were all the predictions surrounding Spence versus Crawford.